Hi class, in this video, we'll go over chapter 16, consumer choices. Okay, so this is a very short chapter. Now first, we need to find out how do economists calculate the consumer satisfaction. So there's a new term we need to learn. It's called something called utility. So utility is the measurement of consumers' happiness whenever a consumer consuming a good and service. Now previously we learned this is called a consumer surplus. But consumer surplus is look at the bigger picture. So for all the consumption we have, how much our happiness is from all the consumptions. Now this utility will measure for each individual consumers, what is each individual consumption's happiness. So this is a tie to each individual consumption from each consumer. So it's called utility. Now utility, the measurement for utility is called util. Sorry, you probably never heard it before, and I promise you will never hear this again in any of the classes. Okay, so only economics. So utility is the measurement of consumer happiness from consuming each additional good, and then the unit measurement is called util, and then the goal for each consumer is to maximize our total utility. All right, so also know the difference between total utility and the marginal utility. Now this is a very similar concept to what you learned before, similar to our total cost, marginal cost, total revenue, marginal revenue. So total utility is the total happiness from all the consumptions. Your marginal utility is the additional consumption from each additional good and service. Well, what do I say now? Additional happiness from each additional consumption. So for example, let's suppose we have a consumer who would like to purchase some chicken fried rice. Okay, so let's say for consumers, for the first chicken fried rice, the utility for the consumption would be 20. And then if consumer purchase 2 order chicken fried rice, the total utility for the consumption will be 35. So that's your total utility. And then your marginal utility for the second consumption will be the difference between the two consumptions. So it will be just 15 units. So the marginal utility is the difference between your total utility, and that's your marginal utility. Okay, so if you look at a bigger table like this, your total utility again matches the total happiness for all the consumptions, and the marginal utility is the difference between each level of total utility. That is called the marginal utility. And also one thing you guys should notice, notice how over here that our marginal utility is 0, and then your total utility is maximized. So whenever the marginal utility is equal to 0, our total utility is maximized. Okay, so that is always true. All right, and then also know something called a diminishing marginal utility. So this is similar to our diminishing marginal product from the previous chapter, but this is talking about our consumer happiness. So for everything you consume, how much extra happiness you get from each additional consumption is decreasing. So the more you have it, even though you might be happy, but how much extra happiness you get out of it is at a decreasing rate. I mean, think about maybe you're very thirsty, you want to drink some, let's say you want to drink a Dr. Pepper, right? So you go to a store, you buy your first Dr. Pepper, you feel very happy about it. Now, if you drink your second Dr. Pepper, you might still be happy, but your extra happiness is less than the first Dr. Pepper you just finished. So that's called a diminishing marginal utility. So the more of something you consume, the less happiness you get from each additional consumption. And from our table there, previous table, it shows that. So notice that this marginal utility is getting smaller, 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 right? That is called a diminishing marginal utility. And then if you graph this, so at the marginal utility curve, whenever this equal to 0, our total utility is maximized. Okay, so that's what we've said before. Whenever marginal utility equals 0, your total utility is maximized. And I also know that this marginal utility will go down as the more consumption you have, and that's called diminishing marginal utility. Now there are some consumption out there in the real world that doesn't have diminishing marginal utility. So for example, any type of how does it is? Any type of addictions, you're gonna see maybe an increase in marginal utility. So for those consumptions, the more you have it, the even more happiness you get from additional consumption. So for addictions, it's very hard to quit because they might have an increase in marginal utility. All right, and then we have an example here. So, suppose your friend says, given the way newspaper and soda vending machine are designed, newspaper readers are more honest than soda drinkers. Now, you guys, most of you guys don't know what this means because you probably never seen a newspaper machine before. So if you guys remember in the old movies, whenever people go to the subway stations, or whenever people go to bus stations, they might have a little metal box. You put a coin in there, and then the box opens. You take one newspaper out of it. Now, if you want to take two paper out of it, nobody can stop you. So once you open the box, you have access to all the newspaper in the box. You can take as many as you want. But for most consumers, they only take one set of newspaper out of it. But however, at the soda machine, now whenever you guys go to vending machine for sodas, the machine only dispenses one soda per each transaction. So you don't have access to all the sodas. Right, so imagine you put your money in the machine, and the machine opens. You can take all the soda you want. It's not like that, right? So that's why the people here saying that people who read newspapers are more honest than people who drink sodas. Well, but if you look at our marginal utility theory here, they operate differently. That for sodas, people might have a very high marginal utility. That there is an incentive to drink more soda. But for newspapers, not the case. For newspapers, all you need is one newspaper. But if you carry more newspaper, that's an extra burden on you. So that's why nobody wants to have two newspapers. So therefore, there's no need to restrict access for newspapers because everybody just needs one newspaper. Okay. And another example we have listed in the PowerPoint is, Red Lobster offered this endless shrimp. So if you guys never been to this promotion before, it costs about $16-17, and then you can eat all the shrimps you want. So the idea is, so that's what the one argument against that is that this is not good, right? Because what if people just wouldn't stop and keep eating more and more shrimp? Well, again, we have a diminishing marginal utility. That as the more shrimp you eat, the less happiness you get out of it, right? So eventually you're gonna stop. Nobody will just eat unlimited shrimp. They eventually just stop. And then by estimate, so the restaurant will actually start losing money whenever a consumer eat more than 3 pounds of shrimp, or roughly 100 shrimps. I don't think that many people would take that shrimp, right? So there might be some people out there can eat 3 pounds of shrimp, but not that many, right? All right, so for diminishing marginal utility is usually true, but sometimes you do see a violation for that. So like we said, any type of addiction might see a violation for diminishing marginal utility. Also, there are some couple examples in the book that says, for people who exercise at the beginning, they might have an increase in marginal utility, or when you start playing a board game and in the middle, after the slow start, you might have, once become more interesting, you might have an increase in marginal utility. Okay, but this concept, the diminishing marginal utility, is usually true. Okay, it's pretty much always true. All right, so how do consumers optimize their purchasing decisions, right? So for every consumption you make, it will bring you some happiness, right? But what kind of combination of good you can purchase to maximize your total utility? So let's suppose we have a consumer here, and this consumer have a choice. Actually, it's a choice of different combinations. So the consumer will be able to buy some pizza. The consumer will be able to buy some soft drinks, and then combined together is our consumer's total utility. So what kind of combination can we have? So how many pizzas and how many soft drinks we can do to maximize our total utility? So this is the concept you guys probably remember from chapter 14. It's something called a bang for your buck, right? So it's for every dollar you spend it, which one give you the biggest bang for your buck, or which one give you the biggest return for every dollar you spend it. That would decide which consumption our consumer will make. So this formula here is very important, that we're going to compare our marginal utility of good X divided by the price of good X compared to the marginal utility for good Y divided by the price for good Y. So let's call this one pizza. So X is pizza. And then Y is our soft drinks or soda. All right, so if your marginal utility of pizza divided by the price of pizza is more than the marginal utility of soda divided by the price of soda. Now what that means if you spend $1 more on pizza, you get more happiness out of this $1 more on pizza than soda. So what do? You buy more pizza, right? So for our consumers, we're going to compare these two consumptions. We're going to see which consumption will give you the biggest utility for every additional dollar you're going to spend. So if this is more, if your pizza is more, you buy more pizza. Now vice versa, if your marginal utility for soda divided by the price of soda is more than the marginal utility for pizza divided by the price of pizza, then you buy more soda instead. So this signage here, whichever is bigger, will determine the direction of consumption. So we determine which good our consumer purchase next. All right, so let's suppose we'll have this example here. So I have a table with our consumption for soda, so Pepsi, and then consumption for pizza. We have the marginal utility for pizza and a marginal utility for Pepsi. All right, so we're gonna compare this. So again, marginal utility for, I don't want to use Pepsi because they both start with P. So soda, so marginal utility for soda divided by the price for soda, and this will be the marginal utility for pizza divided by the price for pizza. All right, so for our first consumption, which one should we buy? Now, if you buy your, where is it? Here we go. So for every pizza is $1, for every Pepsi is $1, for every pizza is $2 per slice. So for our first consumption, the first Pepsi will give you 9 utility. Now divided by $1, that means for first Pepsi you purchase, for every $1 you spend on the Pepsi will give you 9 utility. Now for pizza, the first pizza will give you 20 utility, but it costs you $2. So for every $1 you spend on the first pizza will give you 10 utility. Now the pizza is more, so what do? We buy our first pizza, okay? And then for your second consumption, we'll compare our second pizza to our first Coke, to our first soda. Now the reason why we don't compare to our second soda, because you haven't purchased your first soda yet. We only purchased our first pizza. So first pizza is gone, and next we'll compare our first soda against the second pizza, right? So for your second consumption, that if you buy your second pizza, you get a utility for every $1 spent. But if you spend your money on the first soda, you get 9 utility for every $1 spent. So this one is more. So for our second consumption, we buy our first soda. Okay, now for the third consumption, it's in difference. So for the third consumption, you buy pizza, give you a utility per $1 spent. You buy soda, give you a utility per $1 spent. So they're equal, right? So for the third consumption, it doesn't matter. So for 3 and 4, we're gonna buy second soda and second pizza. Now for the fifth consumption, you're gonna see a difference, right? So for fifth consumption, over here for soda, you're gonna get 7 utility for every $1 spent. But for pizza, that will be 12 divided by 2. That's a 6. So your soda is more, so you buy your next soda, and then for your sixth consumption, we're gonna buy the pizza here, right? So again, we're gonna rank each consumption to see which one give you the biggest bang for the buck, or which one give you the most return or most utility for every $1 spent, and that's what you're gonna buy. Now, ideally, how much would you purchase? You will purchase until you have 0 marginal utility per $1 spent. But we cannot spend all the money we have, right? Because everybody has a budget for it. So this is where the question comes in. So with given your limited budget, what would you purchase? Okay, so I will show you example for that to the end of the slide over here. Okay, all right. Now for so the goal for every consumer is to maximize our total utility. So between different combinations here, which every combination give you the biggest total utility, that's the one I'm going to spend money for. So for this example here, for different combinations, the most utility is coming from this combination. and that's what I'm going to spend money for. Okay, all right. So we're going to purchase our good until all the money are spent. Now we're going to assume consumer here will save no money. So no saving money. Okay, so save no money. Then we're going to spend all the money we have because your happiness, your utility, only coming from saving money. This sounds very bad, but we're going to assume it's true for this chapter. So for consumers, all of the utility will happen from your actual consumptions, but not saving. So we're going to consume our good until either all the money are spent or until wherever the marginal utility for pizza divided by the price for pizza is equal to marginal utility for Pepsi divided by the price for Pepsi. All right. So what if you have more than two good, right? So if you have more than two good, then you're gonna set everybody all equal to each other, right? So this equation here is always true, doesn't matter how many good you have in the consumption. Now, if ever your price changes, whenever price change, it will change this formula here. So if let's say your price for Y is getting cheaper, so price for Y goes down. If price for Y goes down, then this overall ratio will be decreased, and therefore our consumers will buy more Y, buy more X, right? Because your marginal utility for X divided by the price of X will be more than the marginal utility for Y divided by the price of Y. So whenever price changes, it will change our consumer consumption combinations. All right. So there are two effects you have to know. So a lower price led to a substitution effect and also a real income effect. So substitution effect happens whenever consumers substitute a product that has becoming relatively less expensive as the result of a price change. So if it's cheaper, we buy more of pizza or Pepsi or Coke. And the real income effect is that whenever the price changes, so suppose price goes down, it will change the purchasing power of the consumer's budget, right? So those are called real income effect. All right, so we have an example here. So consider Miranda, who has $27 for a fast food budget per month. She can purchase sub sandwich, burgers or tacos. The price for a sub sandwich is $5. The price for burger is $4. The price for taco is $2. Use table below to find Miranda's optimum consumption bundle. All right. So first, we need to fill out this table. So first, we need to find out what is the marginal utility for sub divided by the price for sub. So sub is $5. So first one should be 10, and then 9, and then 8, and then we have 7. And over here, burger is $4. So 36 divided by 4 is 9, 8, 7, and then 6. And last one, taco $2 each. So 20 divided by 2 is 10, 8, 6, and 4. All right, so for our first consumption, what should we buy? For the first consumption, we're gonna buy our first sub, because for the first sub, for every one you buy, for every dollar you spend, it gives you 10 marginal utility. So we're gonna buy the first sub, is our first consumption. Now our second consumption, we're gonna buy taco, because taco is also 10, so they're pretty much the same. So we buy a sub, we buy a taco, but keep in mind our budget is $27, right? So our budget is 27, so we just bought a sub, which is $5. I need some room to write. Let me write over here. So sub is $5. Sorry guys for the mess. Taco is $2. Now for our third consumption, we're gonna purchase either the first burger or the second sub, right? So let's say we buy the first burger for number 3 consumption. Number 4 will be our second sub. So for our budget, we're gonna spend another $4 for first burger, spend another $5 for our second sub. Now before we go on, let's find out how much our budget has spent, right? So so far this for consumption, we just spent $16, and our total budget $27. So we have more room to go. So for our fifth consumption, we're gonna look for the next one. So we can buy either a sub or burger or taco, right? So let's like we do a taco, that's an 8, so which is good. That's $2. We buy a burger, it's also 8. It's also $4. And lastly, we buy a sub, which is $5. How much money is this now? So that's a 16 over here, and then plus 11. Wow, that's a 27. Right, so we're going to stop because we have already spent all of our budget. So for this consumer from Miranda, her optimum consumption will be purchase 3 sub, 2 burger, and 2 taco, and that's the answer. Okay, so that's how you do it. So first setup, what is the marginal utility per dollar spending for every good you have, and then we're going to rank the consumptions until we get to our entire budget. All right, I think that should be it for this chapter. Okay, so discrete choice model, just know what it is, that sometimes consumer only need one purchase. We don't get additional marginal utility from additional consumptions. So for example, like for airline ticket, if you're just a one person who travel, we don't get additional happiness from buying one more ticket, right? So suppose I want to go from here to New York City this weekend, I'll buy a ticket for myself. Now, would I get extra happiness from buying one more ticket? I wouldn't, because I don't need 2 tickets, right? So those are called discrete choice model. Okay, so if you don't know what it is, just actually just know what it is. Okay, all right. And the conclusion. So make sure to know that this equation is always true, right? So so whenever consumer buys something, we want to look for wherever the marginal utility per dollar spent for every good is equal. That means your total utility will be maximized. Okay, so total utility is maximized. And the goal for every consumer is to maximize our utility and also know what's the diminishing marginal utility. So for every for every good you consume, the actual happiness you get from each additional consumption. All right, guys, that's it for this chapter. I will see you for the next chapters. All right, see you later. Bye-bye.